Today we're going to go over energy flow through an ecosystem, primarily talking about food chains, food webs, and energy pyramids and how they relate to how that energy moves through these systems. Let me get my pen off of here. Okay. Everything always begins with the sun in a process called photosynthesis. You can see the photosynthetic formula down here, and you'll learn more about that when you get to biology next year. You can see photosynthesis is a chemical reaction where green plants use water, carbon dioxide, and the sun's energy to store everything in a molecule called glucose, which is a sugar. Okay, so energy is stored in this glucose molecule. And it's also stored in starch as plants. Okay, organisms that can make glucose we call producers. Let me get this off of here. Let me try and move this out of the way so you can see the words here. Okay. Alright. Called producers. And producers use most of the energy they make for them, which means that when you eat a producer, you are not getting all of their energy as they have used most of it up themselves already. Okay. Producers use cellular respiration, which is the same process that consumers use to supply the energy they need. However, the difference is that producers will make their own glucose. Consumers will have to get that glucose from a producer. Okay, you can see cellular respiration's formula here. The word behind the box here is energy. I don't think, yes it is going to let me move it down. You can see it here. I'll move it back up to the top though. Okay. Energy that is not used by producers can be passed to organisms that cannot make their own energy, such as us. This is why we don't get all of the energy, because plants use most of it. Organisms that cannot make their own energy are called consumers. Consumers eat producers to get the energy. And there are first order consumers, which are primary consumers, or herbivores. And again, we see that most of that energy that they get from the producer is consumed themselves. So you can see the energy starts to decrease as we move up in energy levels, or as in trophic levels. Trophic meaning food. So some of the energy moves into the atmosphere as heat. So most is used by that organism. Some is passed on when that organism is eaten, and other is let off as heat energy into the atmosphere. See, some of the energy in the primary consumer is stored, not lost to the atmosphere or used by the consumer itself. And this energy is available for another consumer or a predator. And I'll move this down so you can see it. Move it back up so it's not blocking any of the other words here. Okay, let's see some more things here. A consumer that eats another consumer for energy is generally called a second order consumer, or it may be a carnivore, an omnivore. Most of the times it is a predator. It could also be a scavenger though. And we see that most of the energy is used by this organism. Some will be stored, some will be released as heat. Okay, again, we'll move up. We can call it a third order or a tertiary consumer. And it could also be all of these things again. One of the words that you've had on your vocabulary list this time is omnivores, which means it is an organism that eats both plants and animals, so you could be considered an omnivore. Most consumers that hunt and kill other organisms are predators, and those that are killed and hunted are called prey. Consumers that eat other dead consumers are called scavengers. Move this out of the way so you can see this here. The transfer of energy from the sun to a producer to a primary consumer and then to a higher order of consumer is known as a food chain. Okay, food chains show all of the available energy in an ecosystem. You can see it here moving up. And again here in these food chains. Another way of showing the transfer of energy in the ecosystem is called an energy pyramid, which I'm sure that you've seen before. An energy pyramid show all of these things. Let's get this box out of the way for you here. Okay. The amount of available energy decreases for higher order of consumers. You can see he has to eat more in order to get that level of energy. The amount of available energy decreases down the food chain. It also takes a larger number of producers to support a small number of primary consumers, and it takes a large number of primary consumers to support a small number of secondary consumers. Okay, once again, the energy pyramid here. And then food webs are interconnected food chains, and they show all of the feeding relationships in an ecosystem. Take a look here. You can see how many chains. There are several that you should be able to spot, most of them leading from arrows here. You can see, for example, grass to rabbit to fox, okay, or grass to squirrel to fox, or grass to squirrel to hawk, or anything like that. Or, for a longer food chain, grass to herbivore to spider to bird to snake. So there are several food chains in a food web that just highlights all of the food chains in an ecosystem. Okay. Here you should be able to identify the producers, consumers, and decomposers. And that's it for today.